Welcome back to the Beyond Addiction series. My name is Adrian Webster, and in our previous session we had been looking at some of the healing factors, some of the lifestyle aspects that are involved in giving us the greatest opportunity of success in overcoming the problem of addiction. I would like to continue that discussion. You know, as we do this Beyond Addiction series, we're not just interested in outlining the problem. We're not just interested in sharing with you the neurobiology and the physiology behind the various drugs and how they affect us. I mean, that is interesting in and of itself, but the great goal is number one, prevention, and number two, cure, and coming out of that way of life, out of the problem of addiction, if we have found ourselves trapped in that lifestyle and that way of being. So I'd like to continue our important discussion in this session pertaining to the healing factors. In particular, we're looking at the spiritual component involved in healing. Now, the thing is that you will remember as we went through in that previous session, we looked at the various aspects that could help us, you know, the drinking of the water and the hydrotherapies, that's the use of the water externally to assist the healing process. We looked at medicinal charcoal, we looked at nutritional factors, we looked at exercise, we looked at a number of things. But one of the things we ended on was basically the idea of spiritual commitment, the idea that through prayer we can bring ourselves to God, as it were, that we can open our heart to Him, that we can confess our sins, we can make Him our counselor and our confidant, and that through the promises of the Word, the Scriptures, we can receive from Him the wherewithal that we need, the assurance of His grace and of His strength and of His intervention in our life. And that when we place our faith in those promises, it becomes the recreative power in our lives that we so desperately need. So we're going to continue the discussion at this point in time, focusing on the spiritual dimension. This is an area of healing which, in the conventional treatment facilities of our land and of our world, not much can be offered. You know, it's politically incorrect to try and persuade someone of one's faith convictions in that particular context, according to the thinking of many of those who are involved in drug rehabilitation. But of course, I'm at liberty to share with you on this DVD what I believe the secret to true spiritual healing really is. So let's have a look here. The big question to start us off is, why spirituality? Why do we even include a discussion on spirituality in a series that's talking about going beyond addiction? What is the big deal about spirituality? I mean, surely if we just have the natural remedies and the lifestyle choices and the scientific methodologies to help us to get past withdrawal and detoxification, surely that's enough. Well, you will remember from previous sessions, I've highlighted this numerous times, that we are designed as spiritual beings. And spiritual and physical are not at war with one another. Yes, we are physical beings, but we are designed with a strong spiritual component. In fact, when you look at the makeup of how human beings have been put together, what it is that comprises the human experience, you will know that there are at least 5 elements or 5 dimensions to being human. Number one, there is an intellectual dimension. That is to say that you and I need to be challenged. We need to help our minds to grow. We need to stimulate our minds with the great mysteries of life. We need to ask questions. We need to study. We need to read. If we are neglecting the intellectual development of the mind, we will not go very far in life. We will not be a complete package. Intellectually, human beings need to constantly be challenged. We need to stretch the limits of human thought. We need to imagine. We need to think. We need to contemplate. But in addition to the intellectual side of life, there is also the physical side of life. And we've been speaking a lot about the physical aspects of addiction throughout this series. Physically, we have a body, we have a heart, we have a brain, we have the organs of the body. How do we care for that body? What is needed to encourage the physical development of mankind? Obviously, those lifestyle factors that we spoke about in our previous session are so integral. The nutrition and the exercise and the water and the sunlight and the temperance and the air and the rest and the trust in God. All of these have to do, yes, with our physical dimension, because they all impact one on the other. There's the intellectual, there's the physical, and of course there is the social element of life. You will know that what gives meaning to life is the social side. It is the relationships. When you go back to the Bible and you talk about the creation of man, what do you discover? That human beings were not designed to be alone. Human beings were designed for fellowship with one another, and they were designed for fellowship with God. They were designed for social relationships. You don't have to have a lot of possessions in this world. You don't have to have a lot of money in this world. But if you have some meaningful, deep, committed relationships, you are richer than the richest person on planet Earth. Does that make sense to you? In fact, you can have all those things, but if you don't have meaningful relationships, you will know that life just isn't worth living. If you don't have someone to share your riches, to share your talents, to share your successes, to share your heartaches and your pains, life is empty. Life is boring. Relationships, the social fabric of society, we are designed to be interconnected with one another, which, by the way, is the reason when I make a negative decision, it has consequences on other people. When I make positive decisions, it has consequences on other people. It's like throwing a stone into a pond. It sends a ripple out to the very edges of that pond due to the initial reaction. That's what the decision-making process of humanity is like, because of the fact that we are social creatures designed to be in community with one another. No man, no woman is an island. And you know that if you want to have a happy, successful life, you need not only intellectual, you need not only physical, but you also need social. You also, on top of that, need to be balanced emotionally. Now, a happy intellect, a strong intellect, combined with a good physical makeup, combined with a good social network, often helps to balance out the emotional. They all are interconnected with one another. You will know that when people have emotional instability in their life, that the other areas of their life also suffer. Emotions are integral to our life. I mean, what would life be without feeling? What would life be without joy? What would life be without the positive emotional experiences? What would life be without the negative emotional experiences? Yes, sure, we don't really want to spend a lot of time on the negative side, but emotions were designed to assist us with our quality of life. When our emotions become unbalanced, either because of improper relationships or because of neurochemistry that's unbalanced or whatever else, you will know that that decreases the quality of life quite substantially. And then finally, the last aspect of our composite being as a human being is spirituality. Spirituality is integral to what it means to be human. Yes, in the Garden of Eden, as I've already said, not only Adam and Eve with one another, not only were they created for each other, but they were created to meet with God. He came and He walked and He talked with them in the Garden of Eden in the cool of the day. He met with them every seventh day in a special way. You see, the spiritual aspect of humanity is strong within us. It's in fact a neglect of the spirituality, the removal of God from our consciousness, from our thoughts and all the rest of it, that is perhaps contributing to the high rates of disease and the high rates of dissatisfaction with life and the high rates of divorce and the high rates of lack of quality of human experience, the sense of emptiness that so many people are struggling with. Yes, human beings are more than one thing. Human beings are an interplay of various complex aspects, 5 of them to be precise. We have an intellectual capacity, we have a physical capacity, we have a social capacity, we have an emotional capacity, we have a spiritual capacity. And each of these must be addressed. Hopefully by now you've realized that through the Beyond Addiction series, we are challenging your intellect, your thought capacity. We are encouraging you to healthy physical development. We are educating you on the importance of healthy social relationships and family relationships. We are sharing with you that our emotions are going to be in turmoil if we're messing with the neurochemistry of the brain. And in this session in particular, we are highlighting like never before the importance of spirituality as one of the most important healing factors. When the spirituality is lost, when just like with any of the other areas, when any of those areas are neglected, we are unbalanced. To neglect one aspect of our humanity is to compromise all the other aspects of our humanity. We cannot be happy and healthy when one of these is neglected or unbalanced. We are more than one thing. We cannot just spend all our time reading. We cannot just spend all our time being social. We cannot simply spend all our time focusing on physical health. We also have to devote some attention to understanding how our emotions affect life, and most importantly of all, how spiritual nature affects the rest of the aspects of what it means to be a human being. Complete healing, therefore, can only be realized when the whole person is dealt with. When we go into our conventional treatment facilities of the land and of our nations of the world, what you will find is that spirituality is neglected. As I say, it is politically incorrect to try and guide someone in a particular spiritual dimension. It's kind of a case of, you know what, well, if you believe in a higher power, you can believe in that higher power. We're not even going to identify the higher power. We're just going to encourage you to believe in some sort of higher power that will give you strength. But let me ask you a question. In our world today, despite the fact that there is this movement to see all the gods of the different religions as one God with different names, when you study those religions, you'll discover that the characteristics of those different higher powers, those different gods, are very different. How can they all be different names for one God? It doesn't make any sense. So here's the question. How is it that we can just encourage people by saying, just believe in a higher power? Whatever it is to you, it doesn't matter. You just believe in whatever your higher power is, you get your source of strength from him. Listen, if that higher power doesn't exist, if that higher power is a counterfeit, and that person is trusting in a counterfeit or something that's not even real, then the question is this: where are they going to get their spiritual strength? Where are they going to get their spiritual fulfillment? How are they going to be able to include this in their package of healing? So I'm going to be very politically incorrect and suggest to you today that the true God is the Creator God, that the true God is the God that is mentioned in the Christian scriptures of the Bible. I know that's politically incorrect, but I must share with you my convictions. The God that has given me power, that has given me victory in life, is the God that is taught through the scriptures, that reveals himself through those writings. That's why we keep referring back to the Bible, keep referring back to Christianity in this Beyond Addiction series. I'm going to challenge you and I'm going to say to you, listen, it's not just any God out there, any higher power. There is one God. There is one true God. And we need to be trusting in the true God if we are going to find spiritual healing and spiritual restoration. If we are neglecting the spiritual dimension of life, then we cannot experience complete healing. True healing comes from addressing the entirety of the human experience and optimizing each area of that life, the intellectual, the physical, the social, the emotional, and yes, the spiritual. So I lay before you my personal conviction today, and I share with you, listen, there is one true God, and to address the spiritual dimension of our healing, we have to surrender our lives to that true God. This is not about punting for a particular church or anything else like that. This is just about you finding victory in your life, you finding contentment in your life, you finding the power that I have found in my life through the spiritual healing that comes from association and fellowship with the true God. Without true spirituality, and I'm putting emphasis on true, without true spirituality, complete healing is an impossibility. We may be able to do a lot for a person in terms of helping them through withdrawal by applying scientific methods and hydrotherapies and lifestyle factors. We may be able to counsel them about their emotions and try and help them through that. But a lot of emotional instability is connected to the concept of spiritual guilt, a sense of unworthiness. Now, we can try and tell people lies about the fact that they have innate godhood in them, and we can try and tell them lies about, just look in the mirror and convince yourself that you are something special and all the rest of it. But that doesn't necessarily address, it may suppress the spiritual emptiness that they feel inside for a time period, for a season or two. But guess what? Eventually it's going to resurface in some way or the other. We need to get to a point where we can encourage people in the direction of true spirituality so that they can unburden themselves, so that they can get rid of their guilt and their sense of oppression. And as this happens, it helps to balance out the emotions. It helps to address the ability to interact socially with others. It reflects well on the intellectual development as they begin to study the mysteries contained in the scriptures of God, and it stretches the imagination and the thought powers. It will help us even grow physically as we apply the laws found in Scripture to our natural being. So spirituality is integral to a complete healing experience. Perhaps you've experienced best intentions. You know what I'm talking about. A little bit like the New Year's resolution syndrome, where, this year I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to quit my smoking. I'm going to quit my drugging. I'm going to get out of the harsh work environment. I'm going to start prioritizing time with the family. Best intentions, New Year's resolutions, very similar concept, interrelated. A New Year's resolution is a resolution that's based on best intentions. But what actually often comes of New Year's resolutions? What comes of our best intentions? Well, not a whole lot, right? You see, intentions by themselves are not enough. In English, we have this saying that the road to hell is paved with what? Good intentions. We may want the best for our lives, we may want the best for our families, but best intentions do not produce the best results in and of themselves. A best intention, a good intention, is a good place to start, but it does not always materialize into a reality, a practical reality for our everyday life. So when we talk about best intentions, have you found that you are weak in moral power? Have you found that you know the difference between right and wrong, but you are unable to actually get yourself to do what is right and to cease from what is wrong? You know that that addiction is killing you. You know that every time you light up a cigarette, that you are taking minutes off the end of your life. You know that every time you take those drugs, you're gambling with your brain and with the physiology of your body. You know it's wrong to be stealing, to be sleeping around. Whatever it is that is plaguing you, whatever the difficulty is that you're struggling with, whether it's in the world of addiction or whether it's in the world of some other sin in your life, you may know that you are weak in moral power. You know the difference between right and wrong intellectually. You can see the difference between right and wrong as it's played out socially in your life and interaction with others. You can see it's hurting you physically. You know that it's not doing anything for you emotionally, but you find yourself, despite the knowledge of what's right and wrong, you find yourself unable to live up to that which is right, and you continue to do that which you know is wrong. We call that weakness in moral power. Because you have failed 1,000 times, have you reached a point in your life where you are in slavery to doubt? Have you reached a point where you're not even sure whether you'll ever get out of this lifestyle, whether you'll ever overcome this sinful tendency, whether you'll ever be able to move beyond the LSD or the ecstasy or the cocaine or whatever the addiction is that's holding you back, whatever the substance is that's master over you? Have you reached a point where you've tried 1,000 times because you know what the moral thing is to do, you know what the right thing is to do, you have tried with your best intentions to live up to that moral conviction, but you have failed so many times that you find yourself a slave to doubt. You just get to a point where you almost are willing to throw in the towel and just give up the fight because you've tried so many times and you have just not succeeded. Knowing and doing are two different things. Understanding right and wrong and having the power to obey what's right and to stay away from what's wrong is two different things. And because we fail so many times, our trust is not in God. We're trying to do it our own way. We're trying to overcome in our own strength. We keep failing. And every time we fail, it takes a little piece of us with it. It takes some of our confidence. It takes some of our belief with us. It takes some of our hope, and it destroys it. And eventually we find ourselves not only an addict, not only under guilt, not only under condemnation, not only under a sense of personal rejection of self, but we find ourselves in a place of hopelessness. We doubt that we will ever find healing, that we will ever be restored. Have you had the experience where you are controlled by the habits of your addiction? Try as you might, you just cannot overcome, but you keep failing. You are a slave. What happens when you reach this point? What happens when you reach a point where you find yourself weak in moral power, in slavery to doubt in terms of whether you'll ever get out of it? When you reach a point where you are controlled by the habits of your addiction, habits of your sinful ways? Have you ever found that your promises are like resolutions of ropes of sand? Have you ever been to the beach lately? Have you gone down there with your children and said, let's have a game of tug of war. You stand on that side of the beach, I'll stand on this side of the beach. Let's just take this rope. We'll make a rope out of sand. Let's get some compacted sand together. You pull on that side and I pull on this side. How well did that game work? If you've ever tried that, it didn't work at all because ropes of sand are meaningless. There is no bonding agent there. There is no strength there. It may look good on the surface of it. It may look like it might work, but ropes of sand are useless to anybody that's planning to do anything with that rope. Is that what you found your best intentions to be? Is that what you found all your promises to be in life? Like ropes of sand? Yes, they sound good, they look good, it might even work, but it doesn't come to a practical reality. You see, friends, this is why spirituality is such an important part of the healing process. Without true spiritual commitment, we lack the power for genuine change. Yes, there are some who have a strong sense of self-will, and they can will themselves to quit their smoking. They can will themselves to make external changes, but they are the same struggling person on the inside. They are still empty and broken. There are some people who can make a semblance of external change, but it is virtually impossible to change yourself from the inside out. Not just talking about behavior modification. It is virtually possible to change yourself from the inside out without true spiritual commitment. That's why we are placing such an emphasis on that aspect in this session. You see, God is not just a crutch that the weak lean on. Well, we are weak and we do need a crutch, but God lifts us up. We are dependent on Him. And you know what? You've got to reach a point in your life where you're happy to admit that I am weak. I am one of those people who I've tried with all my best intentions. I've gone around this mulberry bush 1,000 times. I've tried to do things better. I know what's wrong, but I keep doing what's wrong anyway. I know what I should be doing what's right, but I find myself without power to do what's right. I can agree intellectually. I can listen to someone and say, yes, they are speaking the truth, but living that truth out is in a different ballgame altogether. I find myself becoming a slave to doubt. I find myself weak in moral power, a slave to my addictions, and all my best intentions are like ropes of sand. They are not helping me. I do need someone to lean on. I do need someone to carry me through. I do need a strength and a source of power outside of myself. What is wrong with finally getting to a point where you admit that? There's nothing wrong with that, friends. It may strike at your pride, but you cannot have victory in your life as long as you are carrying the burden of pride around, as long as you are trying to make yourself something that you are not. You need to reach a point where you're willing to say, I am weak, I am broken, I need a healer, I need a spiritual doctor. God, help me. God, save me. God, please reach down from heaven and give me your strength, give me your power to carry me through, to turn my life around. Without true spiritual commitment, we lack the power for genuine change, friends. The bottom line is real simple. When we talk about this power for change, we remember the promise of God in Philippians chapter 4, verse 13 that says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. There is no addiction that cannot be broken. There's no substance that is too powerful for the strength of Christ to break. Yes, there are addictions and there are substances which are too strong for you to break in your own strength. Even with all your self-help techniques, even with all the lifestyle choices, and even with all the natural remedies or whatever your approach is to overcoming addiction. I have spoken to addict after addict. I've interviewed them. I've sat down with them. I've sought to help them. And the ones where we see genuine, lasting, long-term success are those who have a real experience with the Lord, those who make a real spiritual commitment. Not just a looking to God to help me to get out of this situation so that in 3 months' time I can go my own way and He's helped me out of that. Now I can do my own thing. But the person who really comes to God and realizes He is a God of love. He's a God of relationships. He gives me what I have been designed to crave. Fellowship, acceptance, forgiveness, unity, relationships. And that's what I want. And when we submit to those natural desires through giving ourselves back to the God who created us, guess what happens? The deepest needs of the human heart are answered, and the power of addiction is broken in our lives. We find that we're no longer hungering and thirsting to drink the filthy, contaminated water of the world, but we come to Him and we receive from Him that pure water of life, and it satisfies the thirst of the soul. We can do all things through Christ, not through ourselves, not through our own intellectual pursuits, not through our own self-help techniques. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Friend, I want to really encourage you today. Do not put off making this all-important decision to follow Christ and to make Him the source of power in your life. Do not doubt for a moment that He will help you. He will not cast you away if you will come to Him with sincerity of heart and say, here I am, Lord, broken, damaged goods. Here I am. I need you to put me back together. I know I've reached a point in my experience where my promises, I realize, are like ropes of sand, where I am in slavery to doubt, where I am controlled by the habits of my addiction, where at the end of the day, Lord, I just do not have the power to reform morally. I am a slave to that which is destroying me, but I want salvation. I need you to reach down and pull me up. He will not cast you aside. And I challenge you even now, make that decision in your heart, make it in your mind. And as I pray with you, you can join in spirit by just saying, yes, Lord, here I am. Come into my life and change me, transform me. Give me the power which I don't have in myself so that there can be a genuine, lasting change. I've learned so much through this Beyond Addiction series, but at the end of the day, Lord, to put it into action requires the divine strength and the divine aid. Please help me, Lord. Let me pray with you as you make that decision in your heart. Heavenly Father, will you bless the viewer? You read their heart even now. You read the intentions of their mind. You know that they are hungry and they are craving. Perhaps you know that someone who's watching, Lord, is still at the point where this is not making sense, where they're resisting. Break down those walls of resistance and help them to discern and to understand that they cannot succeed genuinely from the inside out in a long-term basis without your help. And for the viewer, Lord, who has reached the point where they recognize that they cannot do it by themselves, will you breathe new life into their experience? Will you give them hope that goes beyond addiction? Will you change their situation? Give them new moral power and courage. Help them to wake up with hope in their hearts every morning, with a new direction and a new purpose. Will you break the shackles of addiction that are holding them even now? Will you give them deliverance? And I thank you for answering. In Jesus' name, amen.